Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining this week's Digital World Town Hall meeting. Today is July 7th, and you're joined a Digital World Town Hall meeting as well as a council meeting every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. So thanks for taking the time to join us. Initially, we will focus on the advancements over the last week, and then any kind of questions, topics that anyone wants to bring up in real time, and then we'll convene. So it'll take about 60 minutes. We think that it's always important. Well, we don't think, we know that it's imperative to be able to recognize that there is more than just this physical experience that we're living. When we all basically were given the opportunity to have life and breath here on earth, it comes from other perspectives. So it's whatever your religious beliefs are or spiritual beliefs are, or one and the same. It's important to recognize that as the digital world continues to basically take shape. So we're grateful for the opportunity to be able to do this work and to be able to be involved in it. Grateful for those over the years, some of which on this list have even been with us for coming up on 30 years, and just that consistency. And if this is not a support environment, but if you do have those questions, feel free to chat those in the whatever means that you're connected in with. This is a private membership association. Some of the things that we may discuss may be forward-looking. The real reality is there are secret combinations around the world that basically collude is not the right word, but they work together to combine and overtake certain centralized systems or create those centralized systems. And the digital world is an environment where individuals can actually take their own identity, their own data, and really their own life, and be able to operate not just now, but also in future generations. The goal is to build this so that for literally a century plus, people can actually own their own identity and data, and the centralized systems from around the world that basically control systems, whether they're judicial systems or electoral systems or financial systems. But really, individuals have the opportunity to stand up and be who they are, and to be able to be self-reliant and independent of those systems. And decentralization is a very powerful way to be able to do that. And so a lot of the things that we'll talk about are built on these decentralized systems that enable that individual, everyone. No, there is no individual that is uh, too different from all of us. I mean, we're all on one earth, one family, one people, and it really relates to everyone. It doesn't matter creed, nationality, language, ethnicity, it doesn't matter. And so we'll talk a little bit about how keys and identity, starting with identity, can actually enable change within this ecosystem. This actually talks about 10 layers. We'll go in and bring you up to speed. There's a couple more that we've figured out over the last, I guess that's the beginning of this year, so the last 6 months. So for those that may not be familiar with what decentralization is, or when we talk about keys or identity, it's you basically get 12 words. Those 12 words represent a key, which is a private key that you own and control. You can even change it out or rotate it. And if you forget who you are and you need to have others be able to verify and restore who you are, you can do that as well. But these words actually mean something. And as you operate in this new digital world, you'll be able to do different things with these words, such as one of the big things we're going to talk about is a social presence around a community, and how you can actually dynamically create that, and it automatically can literally not just open up communications but payments and all these different things within these layers. But it does it using derived keys. So these derived keys are off of this master key, and it's important to understand that, because you've got to retain these keys. If you do that, that's where your freedom and choices come from. And the goal of the digital world is to really connect in that physical and digital environment. So with that being said, decentralized identity at the core of it, with derived keys building off of it, is really how these environments basically stand up. Within the 2026 year, these are the key priorities. Campaign around You Own You. And there'll be other campaigns that people are building off of this, but it's really how this technology can go around the world and enable the individual or partners or companies or service providers that want to use the standard of the digital world to be able to stand up and be independent of it. How they can own their own data, their own life, their own identity, how governments can endorse them, all of it. their own assets, their own payments. One of the biggest advancements this last week is around the digital world, really specification, the engineering specification on how the digital world actually operates. And I'll go ahead and jump out of this and jump into that so you can kind of see what that's all about. So we'll just kind of step through this. It really talks about, and I'll actually just grab this first sentence for you.
The canonical design document for member-owned digital life. One root identity, one shared profile, derived service identities across all 12 life layers, payments from day one, optional verification through trusted issuers, personas, data portability, and digital world intelligence.
So it really talks about how an individual can actually own their own identity, but that identity can also have different personas, different wallets, and other things that use those derived keys to build off the future for them. So they're not trapped, but they can still be able to stand up and own their own assets. And if they want to, they can even control them digitally. And there's some beautiful technology around data sharding and the ability to basically get that out. So this is the core guiding principles. So really, who are we? Where are we going? How does it work? Where are the systems? Where are the tools? Where are the APIs? Where are the SDKs? Where's the code? How does it integrate? How do people come together? All of that can basically be completed. I'm just going to read this first, or I'll have the computer read this first element here and just kind of walk through this executive summary. We won't read the rest of the document, but this is
one
important.
Identity, one profile, every layer. Digital world gives every member one simple experience.
Say again?
We're not seeing your screen.
Okay, I'll go ahead and share this here. Yeah, we shared it. Oh, I wish I would have known that earlier. I'm going to log out and log back in here. Here we go. Let's see if this works now. Okay, you should be able to see this now. Yep.
Yes.
Now it might make. By the way, we actually have a live audience from around the world, which will have the question and answers. And so, thank you for the heads up there. Super appreciative. So we're going to go ahead and read this executive summary real fast. It kind of goes in as an overview of what this is all about.
One identity, one profile, every layer. Digital world gives every member one simple experience. Create one digital world identity. Receive recovery words. Receive a wallet. And immediately begin using communication, social, payments, marketplace, storage, and intelligence. No forced identity verification. No second sign up. No second profile photo. Foundational rule. The member always owns the identity, profile, credentials, data, personas, likeness, graphs, relationships, and assets. Digital world provides infrastructure, not ownership. You own you. Verification is a later, optional step. A government program, bank, employer, school, or accredited verification provider issues credentials to the member-owned identity. Credentials at trust. They never create, replace, or control the identity. This version, v3, aligns the specification to the published 12-layer life stack, defines the repository strategy under jiblat.com/digitalworld, and specifies the machine-readable layers integration module that feeds every public surface from a single source of truth.
So this is really what that was just talking about. There's a lot of detail here. There's also repos within the Clear ecosystems, and that's where service providers can come in and add some unique flavors onto it, as you will. So, but this document, very valuable, very important, kind of a guiding light as to all the other principles. We've also stood up the documentation sections, the layers, the APIs, the SDKs, as well as the normal source code. And then it goes through kind of the principles, and I'll let you guys read this or gals read this on your own. And then the individual layers. And we've kind of touched on these historically, but the layer where people actually connect, whether it's a web interface, whether it's robots in the future, whether it's AI today or in the future, whether it's wearables, whether, you name it, rings to glasses, to watches, to scales, all of these different interfaces tie to this life environment. The intelligence layer, the social layer. We're actually going to talk a little bit about the social layer. This is exciting new topics that have literally some of the latest news. We'll actually show them to you today. The communication layer, real-time communication, collaboration that can even be tied into the bot-based environment. Very different than the signal-based environments or the WhatsApp environments. Storage layer, health layer, finance layer, identity layer. This is a resolution, like a DNS resolution type system, but for future systems that talks about decentralized identifiers and how apps and people and browsers or protocols and even robots or AI in the future can actually verify cryptographically or mathematically before any kind of username or password is even used. In the digital world, you don't need usernames or passwords. You are you. You control your own identity. You just got to learn the things that we've talked about around these keys and key management. Node layer, network layer, and governance layer. The governance layer is super important. We'll talk about state-endorsed digital identity and how that basically can roll out around the world, where governments give the individual the ability to create their own identity, and then they just endorse them. They don't control them. They don't take away their identity or their rights to be able to exist. They can't see when their credentials are used, or they can't take away their credentials. The individual can literally build their own life independent of centralized systems. Talks about high identity, and there's a central spine of it, but then there's other types of personas or archetypes that you can build off of that central spine. So these personas that we'll talk about, maybe it's, you know, a professional, or you want to look at it from a dating standpoint, or friends, or maybe it's genealogical based, or in New Zealand, they would talk about it as whakapapa, or who we are, or where we come from. So, you know, massive, massive details. 16 years we've been working on this, and it is absolutely the focal point in time for humanity to use and stand up this type of technology for the future generations that will come as you see this convergence of AI and bots that will come in with humans. When I say bots, I'm not talking about trading bots, I'm talking about real robots that will actually have intelligence built into them. And we've got to have an environment where humans, the digital world, and the physical world can literally come together with humans in the center of it. So this is actually talking a lot about how identities are created. Very important things. So for instance, communication, social, finance, health, storage, and we'll walk through some of these new technologies today, specifically communications and social platforms, and how they come together and how they'll actually link into the future. So I'll encourage everyone on this call. A lot of you, this will be the first time you've ever seen it. It's absolutely beautiful, but I look forward to get into that. And then verification, endorsements, credentials, all of that basically tied around the individual. And again, laws within countries and states and provinces are basically starting to stand up and saying, we'll actually do that or we won't. For instance, in America, there's only 13 states so far that are actually willing to offer endorsement or state identity endorsement. State SETI is what they refer to, the standard within the state of Utah. So, and then this is the personas where an individual can have a personal identity, professional. So a good example of how humans use this today is maybe you use Grok for research, or maybe you use Instagram for dating, or some other app, or maybe you use, let's say, Facebook for personal or family, and LinkedIn for professional. These are social platforms where you have different personas across them, but they're all social based, if you will. So that's an example, but it also ties to other things. You know, you may do banking and with one bank with personally, and then with business, you may do it with a different bank. So the ability to still be independent and free and choose is actually one of the most important parts of the digital world. Having that choice is very, very key. This Digital Choice Act today is actually the 7th of July. 6 days ago, this went live. And what this is within the state of Utah, 2 years ago, May of 2025, it went live through Parliament as a law where an individual can request their data. Remember these personas? So let's say you have all these different accounts with your data in it, your health data, your finance data, your social media data, your photos. You can request through a click of a button and say, I want all of my data back. This is who I am. I've verified my account. This is the data format I want it in. This is the date that I want it by. And this is the consequences if you don't send it. And within this Digital Choice Act within the state of Utah, there's a liability per vendor per instance of $2,000 per account. That's a big deal. If you've got 100 accounts, that's a couple $100,000 per year if everything stacks up. So big topics there around the individual owning their own identity and data. The ability for you to say, I want this data, I want my likeness, I want my photos, I want my album, I want my social graph, maybe it's my friends. all of those types of things. You can literally request it. And then what do you do with it? Well, that's what we're going to talk about here in a second. So this member data ties to a vault that can be an individual based vault tied to sharded data that is not in a central location, but the individual is the only one that has the keys. Remember those 12 words and the derived keys that tie to it. So one of the other big things that we're building is what we would call in New Zealand or Aotearoa, whakapapa, your family, your genealogy, who you are, where you come from, what you do, and not just for this generation, but for future generations. I believe the breakthrough with AI and these types of decentralized systems are going to, as well as what's happening within society around being centrally controlled. And a lot of you may think, this guy's just always talking about this centralized systems and secret combinations. And a lot of it is we're not getting into the minutia of what's going on with news, whether it's with cameras or this arrest or that control or that news or that financial system. I think you can see it in your own part of the world. Something just doesn't feel right. What is money? How does it work? Why is it that politicians and rules all tie to the few and not the many? How can we all as humans, as family, stand up and actually do something that's different than what's happened in the past? And I believe that the future wars and conflicts won't necessarily be the physical type of thing. By the way, if you haven't seen this movie around George Washington, if someone could give me the name, I know that's the stupidest thing, but there's a movie that came out this last week around how the United States of America was actually stood up and fought for and etc. But a lot of that is on old war tactics. They would stand in a field and shoot at one another. And this was one of the times when it actually changed up. And I really recommend you watching this because that's a good example of the physical things that are happening. But what we're talking about now is not a new world like what happened with how America was created, how the Declaration of Independence was created, how the Bill of Rights was created, how the Constitution was created. And you know what? Those were all three of those documents were the first of their kind in the world. In the world. And then after that, you got 150 plus countries that have basically stood up similar documents in their own realm. How many constitutions are there in the world? My point is they all came off of that same structure, but that was for a fight for what we call the digital world or the new world in those times. So what we're talking about here is how does this relate to us? And it's actually how we can organize our data in an intelligent way and use it for the betterment of humanity, not just for this generation, but for future generations. How it actually follows the state-endorsed digital identity systems, how the frameworks and laws actually work together. Literally, how a right, a digital right, a digital bill of rights, which is what I believe that the state-endorsed digital identity really incorporates for future generations. And it's the first state in the world to do it. I believe that some folks on this call may help other countries to actually stand up, just like the state of Utah has stood up. And this digital world basically specification ties to the state-endorsed digital identity as a reference point for all the installations. So they follow the laws that have actually been approved. 75 votes, all of it were for it across the House and the Senate. None were against it. And the one woman that said, I don't know about this, she started jumping into it and understanding it, going to the events. And literally, I just happened to bump into her. I just said to her, "Kia ora," and on a break, and she literally engaged. Like she was like, wow, how do you know what that word is? And make a long story short, she ended up videoing this whole thing and posting on Facebook. I'll go ahead and, as a matter of fact, maybe I should find it and repost it on this new platform. But there's so much to review with you. There's so much to go over. I'm going to jump off of this, but I cannot talk more about how important this particular document is and how it will tie to all SDKs, software development kits, APIs where others can link to it, layers, or the actual code where people can actually start working from it. So from a technology standpoint, you know, this document, this specification has been something that this is actually the third iteration of it that ties to the declaration of what the digital world stands for, why we're here, and then a lot of the legislation structure that it actually stands for. Now, legislation is you just come together, you create the laws, you tune them, manipulate them, change them, delete them, modify them until everyone's happy. You vote on it, you get alignment. And that's one thing in the digital world is people can actually have a voice and a vote. And one of the first things that I think is really important. So for instance, these are all things that are either in draft form or law. They have to take like 6 months to go through a review process, but everyone basically can see it. This is a new one that I would like to review prior to going through this next level of technology, which is a digital world content policy. So how is it that new systems can actually enable a safe society that enables choice and the people's voice? Like it's very difficult when you talk about really content filtering versus freedom of choice. So, or freedom of speech, any of those types of things, it's a very different or hard line to draw. So this digital world content policy, particularly as it relates to all the layers of the digital world, I propose that everyone, let me try and get a link here, and I'm going to drop this in here for those that may want it. So if you want to review it, you can do this. And yeah, thank you, Sean. It's Young Washington. Great movie. If you haven't seen it, I definitely recommend go watch it. It's amazing. So, yeah. Let's see. So please review this. We're going to go through this in a little while. Why? Because what we're going to show you next is a very key part of the future. And here we go. So inside of this world that we all get to live in, imagine, and I'm actually going to jump to, imagine a new system where an individual, so I'm going to jump on, so look at this name for just a second, okay? So this is actually the first 4 letters and last 4 digits, I should say digits on both of them, of a cryptographic key that is a derived key from an identity that was created. This is actually a sharded data set for storage, particularly just for social platforms or a community-based system. So think about Facebook replacement or any of the media platforms, whether we're talking about X or Instagram or LinkedIn. Imagine a platform where you can basically have your own feeds, your own data. So you can export from Facebook your likeness, your social graph, your photos or albums, and you can import it into this system. Like literally, this was actually just posted minutes ago, an hour ago. You can see, you can literally, the quality, the ability to link certain things together, how you want to actually relate, and I'm not just talking memories, but I'm talking how you want to connect with others, how you want to get marketed to or not marketed at all, how you want to be, instead of commoditized by Google and Facebook, how you can actually be free and independent of the centralized systems as it relates to data. So by the way, this links into 35 million users already. So you can be a part of them, or you can literally be your own island. The systems that were built for the last 20 years, I believe, are dinosaurs. Whether you look at Facebook or X, they're literally dinosaurs. But this may look like these types of systems, but all it is a system that will literally link into a bigger, deeper part of this future system. And I'll go through and actually show you specifically what I'm talking about. So imagine you already understand life, your family tree, your timeline, your map, your DNA. We'll go through that in a future meeting that's actually not live yet, but well, pieces of it are. But all of this elements around who you are that ties to your reputation, that ties to the ability to actually tie to centralized systems. Maybe it's around credit, maybe it's around banking, etc. Licenses, permits, registrations, certifications, any of those things that may be government based and you want to get endorsed with your own identity, the communication systems, so the ability to chat, to have people and places and things, which I'll show you a little bit more about that as well as in the future. If you've already been in, you've already seen them. And then this community element. So this community element is really what I'm talking about, will actually tie in to these types of systems in the future. And you can get whatever feeds you want on whatever topics you want. If you just want to see photographs or maybe songs or maybe whatever, you can literally tie it to those existing feeds out there in the world, but then you can also be in control of it. It's not something that others are in control of. Your own identity, your own messaging system. This is how you connect with other people within a community, how you can actually share pages. Inside of New Zealand, we would call them iwis. So there'll be iwis environments that'll be built on every one of them, and then how they will actually link. This profile is actually a decentralized sub-profile of the spec that we talked about here. So remember, when we talk about the personas, this is just one persona around a socialized platform, so a social media type system. But you can have multiple different ones. So this is really the big announcement, is the digital world is launching its own social platform and community-based platform that ties to the same archetype around the storage that the digital world is built. So the individual owns their own storage. And you can even offer, for those of you that can actually see you can even offer a storage type device where you host it at your home, you plug it into an internet connection, and then you put storage on top of it, and you can become a part of the network that actually gets the ability to get the centralized systems or data centers to be a part of everyone. It's not just about building these crazy centralized data centers. It's about everyone owning their own data through intelligently architected systems. Does this make sense before I jump into other parts and pieces? Anybody from our audience have questions before I go on? Or any thoughts or recommendations or comments or concerns?
All right. How many different social media platforms are currently compatible with that? Facebook you mentioned for the Kiwis.
Great question. That's a really good question. The ability for, let's see if I can pull in, you have the import export features and functions that will happen from Facebook initially, but the compatible streams will tie to multiple standards, in my opinion, in the future. This will actually, and that's the big bet that the digital world has to do. When we talk about these different layers, we've got to start with a standard that is actually going to be the standard. So for instance, a lot of people argued with me over and over and over about little connectors. And I said, no, USB-C is going to be the standard. Even with Apple, it will be the standard. And now your iPads and your iPhones all come with these as a standard. The key is standards, not just from a physical standpoint, but also from a technology standpoint or a protocol standpoint. For instance, when we look at, if we look at this little browser system here, and we look at any of the details around it, this SSL connection is a standard in the security world. And I personally believe that SSL, the way that they're created, even though they're math, just like all these other keys that we're talking about, the way that the private keys are managed is not a scalable solution for the future. But this SSL is actually a protocol that is a standard. And I believe that the social standard, this protocol that this is all based on, will actually be the standard for the future. And what's beautiful is the laws, the state-endorsed digital identity laws. And when we talk about this digital choice layer, these are actually systems that say the person can import or archive their data based upon standards. And I personally believe that this standard will be the future. So right now there's about 35 million users that are built on this standard, which is what you're seeing these feeds on. Like you can go in and just explore and say, I want to explore sports or maybe video games, or I want to get a different type of science feed. You know, this has got 30,000 users to it. So I actually want to understand what this is all about. And I want to start learning more about these types of things. the point is I believe that this will be the standard, at least within the next decade, for the future. And the goal for the digital world is to really pick these layers that become the standard infrastructure. So behind identity, and by the way, well, I won't even go into that right now, but each one of these layers will have its own code base that will be a standard or a potential standard for the world to stand on in the future. So there's a lot that goes to that. Does that answer your question, Sean?
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions or thoughts or comments or feedback? Okay. The next big thing that's important to go through, we touched on some of these. This is actually what it'll look like once it's integrated in. So you've got your different mobile apps and then web-based apps that you'll see these different categories from life, identity, communications, community, assets, property, business, health, travel, and arrangements or agreements. These things will tie to an interface that's all combined or tied to individual apps, whether that's on your phone, whether that's on your whatever your desktop device is. So that's basically a big announcement. Another topic that the digital world has been focused on is around transportation. So I don't know if you saw within this, there's this travel category. So imagine if someone can go into one of these jurisdictions where the state basically says, we're going to adopt this as a new law, which means governmental agencies, law enforcement, healthcare, legal systems, maybe you're talking about financial system, maybe it's a bank, maybe you've got to provide ID when you open an account. Well, what happens when those things actually get legally obligated to take a new form of identity that is mathematically created and not just some plastic or paper piece of paper? Like, how hard is it to forge a birth certificate nowadays, or maybe a driver's license, etc.? Well, the point is once that happens, identity becomes proven by math, and payments also become proven by math. If those two things are true, then one of the environments that we all have, I believe, a right, not just it's a human right to privacy, but it's a human right to travel. And in many ways, that Constitution we talked about before is constitutionally protected for travel. So imagine if an individual can say, I'm actually going to open up my Life app, I'm going to click on travel, and I'm actually going to say, this is the address I want to go to. And it pulls up. Maybe it's a self-driving vehicle. Maybe it's from Tesla. Maybe it's from Waze. Maybe it's from a Clear company, which is like Clear Taxi. Which maybe it's from Uber, maybe it's from Lyft, maybe it's from local transportation like a bus, or maybe it's from free transportation that in certain areas actually provides trips. But what if you could actually scan all of those types of environments with one scan and be able to see all the different options? So let's say you picked an address. I wonder if I can grab. So let's say you go from one location to a certain address and it pulls up, hey, with Clear, it's this price and this time to pick up. With Uber, it's this price and this time to pick up. With Lyft, it's this price and this time to pick up. With the bus system, it's this price. So you could literally pick $11.50 and 7 minutes versus $2.50 in 12 minutes. You know exactly what your options are instead of just saying, which I would say almost everybody on this call basically uses either Lyft or Uber. And you have to make the choice on the vendor when you actually pick your app. In this environment, within this travel system, in this Life app, whatever region it is, you can literally say, I'm going to just go ahead and pick a certain vendor. So let's say in this, I picked Clear Taxi. I've actually entered it in. I know exactly who's going to get paid what. The drivers. So I'm going to pay $11.50. The driver's going to get paid a certain amount. The network is going to get paid a certain amount. Insurance is a certain amount, state taxes. And imagine if state taxes could actually be paid in real time, which is a whole nother conversation. Because once you pay taxes in real time, you can then say, hey, I paid sales tax. It hit this state and this county, but I want to know that it actually is going to go to the roads and it's going to go to the schools. And I want transparency. Maybe it's paying for somebody's lunch and I know about it. Most people don't have any issue paying taxes when there's accountability behind it. It's tyranny if you don't know where those things are going and they're just disappearing. And the next thing you know is it's harder for you as an individual to make ends meet. And then you start scratching your head on these other types of individuals, these secret combinations, where they're throwing crazy money around. And it's just, I won't even get into the details there, but you can imagine how a new type of service like what we're talking about can actually be launched. And the goal is to get this live within Utah by November, which is when we have 20 plus different states coming in for state endorsed digital identity within the state of Utah to launch this new system of life. And this is just one category or layer of travel around that. So questions or thoughts around this? If you want, I can jump in to I will jump into, this is actually Utah Taxi. So it's utah.taxis, the URL. These are the different, there's actually 2 other vendors that we're going to work on in addition to Lyft and Uber, and then the local state stuff. The ability to do pre-ordered stuff, or stuff on demand. So you can say, hey, I need a ride right now, or I need a ride in 15 minutes. Or maybe it's for a mother-in-law that needs to go in and get her hair done, and she's not able to drive because she's like 93, but she still wants to go get her hair done. You can just say, hey, mom, this driver will be there to pick you up. If you can't make it, in my opinion, is like, go spend time with them. But anyways, different conversation, but I'm trying to articulate that there's a way to be able to have not just a real value, but something that can actually provide reputation for the driver, reputation for the individual, privacy for the individual around payments. They don't need to know your full name, but neither does it. The driver doesn't need to know it, but neither does the centralized companies. The clear ecosystems, the digital worlds, they don't need to know any of that stuff. And the centralized companies like Uber or Lyft or others don't need to know it either. But think about a type of, instead of like getting a dark vehicle, you can actually get a light vehicle and you get white glove service that comes with it. You also pay for it, but you also keep the funds local. And one of the goals is to track how these taxes are actually used locally. Very, very big stuff. If you haven't downloaded the Utah Life app, you can through Google, through Apple, or through the Clear Marketplace, or there'll be an actual update to the Clear phones, which is a whole nother beautiful conversation. And there'll be this travel button. That's where you'll actually be able to dispatch or get one of these lifts. So thoughts, questions?
How quick would this be up and running, Mike?
We plan to be through pilot phase by November, but we're actually have outreach right now to these different vendors that are there. And we're lighting up within the Clear Taxi ecosystem in Utah. Our goal is to have 24 different vehicles up, and we're just starting with some of the initial ones. But this is actually the Clear Taxi site, which will be one vendor within the Utah taxi environment, within the Utah Life environment. So these are the different regions. You can see Idaho Falls is a secondary, Phoenix is a secondary. There's some driverless vehicles that are already deployed down in Phoenix, was the first place, as well as San Francisco, that we're partnering with a company that has done that. And so it's not just Uber or Lyft with human drivers, and it won't be just Tesla driverless vehicles, but you'll also have some of these other vehicles. They're actually Jaguars that are doing crazy stuff. But the problem is they're tied into centralized systems that are profiling people. Like I don't even want to get conspiracy theorists, but you'll see it as it comes out. You will see it when you start looking at things like this. If you haven't seen Flock or the Flock cameras, this is a map just within the state of Utah, or in the United States of America. These are all cameras that are not only just profiling license plates of cars, but they're actually profiling humans. And you may think, yeah, you're just smoking crack, Mike. That's not real. But I've been telling you about this for 2 decades plus. Why? Because we were involved in the original software development that was actually created to build what Edward Snowden launched his campaign on with when he told the world around PRISM. The software came out of university. It came out of Utah. It's actually hosted. The NSA facility is based in Utah. Like it's a 5-story facility that goes 5 stories underground. It's massive. Every single browse, every single word, every single text, every single search, everything, a call, 100% is actually tracked, stored, meta tagged right here in Utah. And this is where it ties to data around IDs, humans, cars. I'll go back over to the main page here, see if I can get just to. This is what they're doing with cars. So the 112,000 cameras, and people may say, great, it just keeps everyone safe. But what I'm telling you is the way that these things are tracked and surveilled is not keeping people safe. As a matter of fact, it's violating search and seizure laws in the United States of America under the 4th Amendment. It is absolute violation of privacy. And I'm not just talking, who cares about a driver's license plate that's actually tracked? When you start really understanding what this means for humanity, and it's not just license plates, it is humans. And I'm not talking about what's happening in China. As a matter of fact, I think that I've spent time in China, and a lot of people just take these things as just normal. For instance, you pull up to a curb, there's a camera inside of the cement sidewalk that knows if you're allowed to park there or not. If you're not, it literally links into social credit stores, and you're gonna see this stuff as a main part of humanity in the future. And when you take artificial intelligence / digital ecosystems and combine them with human experience, it is going to change. And now is the time where humans must be in control of it. And to do that, you must have systems like this type of system where people can request their data back. They can get their identity. They can own it. And no one can take it from them. Not even the digital world. Like literally, it is owned by no one. It is controlled by no one other than the individual. Now, if they lose their keys and they don't understand key rotation and key restoration, that's a different conversation. There, in my opinion, what happened on July 4th, this last week, is all about liberty and choice and America, and it's all great. But without responsibility, we have nothing. We must be individually and collectively responsible, not just to one another, but to future generations that are literally being robbed. And I know that may be harsh, but it's a reality. Not only maps from this application, but you'll also see maps of memory of where your families came from, where you've lived. All of these things will link into it. Whole nother conversation around genealogy. I don't know that we'll have enough time to go through that. The digital world and AI is another very big thing that's happening. So we're basically being able to develop. I would say about 50% of our development now is done by AI, and the other 50% is humans just approving it. The Explorer now has, you can pick a currency as a standard base, and it can calculate assets based upon that. You can do it in a public way or in a private way. We're going to roll out campaigns with different partners in this particular ecosystem. They have thousands of locations, and they're pumping oil and putting it in cars. I should say gasoline. But we're going to do some amazing things, and we want to have that live also by November. There's license plate stuff. I won't even dig into the details of that, primarily because some of the folks that should be, when we announce this, they should be on this call, and they're not here right now. I thought they might be, but they're not. Lastly, by the way, anybody have questions before I yak after on this last topic? Uh-oh. Okay. Any observations around what you've seen? Any thoughts, comments, concerns, feedback? Say again?
It's anything, the Uber and Lyft, it's hugely disruptive and something that's going to change the landscape. I mean, you're doing to the cabs, yellow cabs, what Uber did to yellow cabs, you're doing to Uber right now.
That's exactly right. That is exactly right. But the key is to give people choice. But Mark,
Yeah.
you just hit it on the head. I mean, it's interesting that you would say that, but your observation is spot on. Give people choice and give them the opportunity to be responsible too at the individual level. And I think humanity will rise to the occasion. We will do better than we've done with these systems. But thank you for
I think if the customer can direct and have an understanding of how the money is being deployed, that's huge. And then also, if the same ride for the same service and the same type of car, more money is going to the driver, I think you're going to have a happier driver and a more willing driver to take those rides versus others potentially.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. There's a lot more. There's so much more. There's an agreement topic. There's genealogy topics. There's so much to get into. Other thoughts or comments? I'm going to jump into the Clear store at clear.store. I'm going to go through current product offerings. Most of them are sold out except for 2 of them. And I'm going to go through 3 future product offerings. The problem is timing matters with this in a big way. We have 3 amazing phones. Let's see if I can show you some of them. This is one of the models. This is another one of the models. So you literally have these new phones, and some of them are foldable, some of them are single. So for instance, this one here, I'll go and open them all up. This one here is list priced at $799. It is a solid base, great phone, great memory, great screen, great battery, great camera. And it's all decentralized. It runs all of these technologies built in. The ability for the operating system to be independent of Android and Google, the identity to be built in. When you get the phone, you actually get your master private key, so everything actually builds off of that experience. You don't need usernames and passwords anymore. You can literally link your identity to those usernames and passwords and change them with your new cryptographic identity that's based on math. Web browsing, scanning, health, identity, news, social, all of it is built into these phones. The reality is to launch this thing in 2026, we're at 7% of where this particular model needs to be, which is way off. Like, we're at July 7th. We're coming up on July 25th. So we're less than 3 weeks away. And if we don't raise enough, this product won't launch in 2026. That's a big deal. It's a big issue. This is the next one that's actually a little bit bigger. So you can see the side on it. It's got all the same specifications, but it's actually got a bigger screen. It opens up. So you can see it kind of here as it actually opens all the way up. Good quality. It's got, the screen is actually better than any of the screens that we've had historically. It's an OLED screen that's solid. Same type of thing. This phone, and maybe what we did was we built too much. We spec'd out, and that's why we go through and allow the public to say what they want. And I think on this particular one, this isn't just a single screen or a double screen, it's a triple screen phone. This is a very large phone. I personally would go to this. I actually like larger devices if they're not too heavy. But the pricing, I think, is just too high on it. Almost $3,000, $2,800. And literally we're at 3% of funding. So we're way off on funding for this guy, which basically means we're going to miss our targets for 2026 phone launches. This thing also has just less than 3 weeks away on it. So if you want to buy one, buy it. If we don't ship the product, you get your money back. Or what we should probably do is relaunch these things with just a simple deposit. And that's what they do with cars and other things. It's like put $100 down instead of saying people have to commit to $3,000. I think that's where we messed up. I really think that instead of saying, hey, buy one and show your support and show us which one you want and drop $2,800 versus drop $100 to know that you would be interested. And you've got to let them see the reviews and see the feedback and see what other people are saying before they spend more than $100. So I think that's probably the right strategy. I don't think there's anything we can do to pick up being so far off base. Like, this is the opposite of what Apple does when they do product releases. So for instance, this is a new watch. How do we do it? Or whether it's a ring, how do we communicate with the body? What's the benefit of features? There's so many features and functions that you can't describe it pre-product launch. So they just say, hey, we're going to bite the bullet and we're going to invest in the ability for people to hopefully buy. And that's the opposite of what this is about. It's like buy and have the hope on the other side of it. But I think we need to meet in the middle, which is basically a deposit. So any thoughts, comments, feedbacks, observations on this topic or any topics you want to discuss? Anything anybody wants to bring up as an open topic or general discussion or anything? If you could do some homework between now and the next week's meeting or whenever you want to bring this up and review this digital world content policy, we'll push it into the legislative process. It's not long. We're talking about, how many pages is this? 28 pages. So, but there'll be a voting process. You can modify it. You can change it. You can tune it. But this is actually a really big topic because content filtering is one of those things that can either encroach on someone's rights, the right of freedom of speech. Let's say their freedom of speech or expression is they want to put 3 eyes in their body. They dementedly put 3 eyes and doesn't feel right. It's not common. Most of us don't understand it, but that's what they want to do. And then they want to post that online. Some people would say that's mutilization. I'm just making this up, but pornography is the number one issue or a use case that the internet's used for. The question is, should pornography be in this type of a social platform? And that's really what this policy was built on, because that responsibility topic, along with these freedoms and rights, you also have to have that responsibility that says what's right. And what's right for one may be different for another. And that's why everyone having a voice and true voices, that's actually what matters. So it's how can someone, I'll go into the Mexican environment. How can someone come into a country? By the way, this last week, many phone numbers in Mexico were actually turned off, and they'll continue to be turned off because as of July 1, it was actually put into law. They're going to do it slow. But let's say, I'm going to jump down to a different topic. Let's say we want to vote for something. You can literally grab a device with the Life app, whether it's got Mexican Life on it. And let's say that we want to vote for this gentleman right here. You can literally, a simple scan, a verification, something I have, something I do in a certain space and time. It's 5-factor authentication. Your watch is 18, go up. So the point is that's your voice, that's voting. And yeah, so I appreciate those that actually care about these details. Some of you may just hear a talking head, but the reality is these topics are imperative for our dispensation and our time, for us physically to come together, digitally come together. It's the same. Like this, all of these folks, we're talking Australia, New Zealand, Canada, America, even just with a couple people online, we're all over the world. And the goal is, how do you create a platform or a base where the world can stand up and have stability around the architecture, around the specification of around what it is? And, for those that this may be new or maybe foreign language, thank you for attending. Thank you for caring. Thank you for listening. This will be posted in remembrance for future generations, and we'll see where it goes from there. Any last comments, observation, words, prayers, anything that anybody wants to leave us with? Well, thank you for taking the time, for your attention, for caring, and we will see you next week, same time. So Tuesday Mountain Time. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye, everybody. Much love.